It is possible to use disruption, which may be strategically designed to create fractures in your team, right? You can use that disruption to bring your team together. You 100% can. It's not about making it through. It's about making it through together and tighter and stickier to one another. In the food and hospitality space and beyond that, there's any number of things that are going to happen tomorrow that happened yesterday that are going to keep us from being together and sticky as a team. How are you going to use that gift of crisis that you've been given to bring your team together?
Welcome to another episode of the Prosper Brief. I'm your host, Jeremiah Wynn, and today we have what I believe is going to be a very important episode. In the current age of social media, where stories can go viral in seconds and opinions are not only voiced online but also carried into the workplace, disruption doesn't just touch business, it shapes it. Now more than ever, it's important for leaders to understand how to manage and lead through these very pivotal moments in our society. The challenge not only is to acknowledge the current climate, but to continue building unified teams while ensuring clients remain confident, satisfied, and happy. For this conversation, I'm so glad to have Dr. James Pogue with us, who will help us to understand how to navigate through these tough times. Dr. Pogue, it is so good to have you on the podcast today. There's so much going on right now, and one thing that I'm kind of like looking at as I look at the current climate of business, of social media, of pop culture, it seems like a lot of businesses, sometimes we have the tendency to overreact. We're so in the moment that we make a harsh decision right now. My first question for you is, how do we know what is an overreaction versus not doing enough? Like how do you discern what to do?
That's a great question. And I will start by saying oftentimes you don't know until after whether or not you have overreacted or underreacted. And so you have to give yourself grace, right? And so if you can start with your preparation, and if your preparation involves the testing of yourself as a leader, the testing of yourself as a follower, as a team, as an organization, in stressful moments that look like, smell like, taste like crisis,
Yeah.
then you can get accustomed to what the boundaries are of too much, too little. What does it feel like when we're starting to get towards those moments where in the past, in our practice, we've done too much, or in reverse, when we've done too little? Right. So it's not about trying to assess in the moment what might be too much. It's using past experience to predict future behavior, particularly yours, your teams, your organizations, your peers, your industries, etc. But to give it, as I said, give yourself grace in the moment to recognize that the decision that you make will be critiqued, and hopefully harshly, maybe not negatively, but harshly, by those who are coming after you, and by yourself as well. So you know when it's too much if you've practiced what's too much in the past, if you've studied what's too much in the past. You know if it's too little if you've practiced what was too little in the past,
Mm.
and you've studied what was too little in the past.
Wow, that's such a great answer. I was having a conversation with Derek Gaskins at Prosper Forum, and he's in the convenience space. And he said, when you make a decision and it's not working, you change it immediately. What are the time frames that we should be looking at to discern whether we made a good decision or not in those moments?
So that's a great example, and Derek's a smart guy, and he has the benefit of having studied the history. He knows that in the past, if they make a decision around, say, gas price points, how long do you have to make a decision? This long. That's what history has told us. You're not supposed to just know.
Mm.
Nobody sprinkles magic dust on you and says, "Oh, I therefore know." No, you have to study the history, and you have to study the your own leadership decisions in the past. So you know what's too long. Again, as I go back to the first answer, you know because you study the history. Too oftentimes we neglect the benefit of history, and we want to say, well, I know, I've studied, I have the position, I was given the position, I earned the position, so therefore I must know. Well, no, you've been given permission to learn more. And that learning more is what's going to help you in those more difficult times.
So times like right now when you see the pendulum swing from one side
Mm.
to the other, we're pretty much just supposed to utilize the same tool, but understand it's a different game almost now, right?
Yeah, that's a fair analogy. I mean, there's many disruptions that are occurring in every moment, and today's disruptions seem to have an outsized impact because they are enhanced by technology. In the past, things were cordoned off to that corner, to that industry, maybe to that store, maybe to that state, maybe to that community. Not so much anymore. On a quiet day, you're one store in quote unquote the middle of nowhere on the corner of First and Main Street gets all the attention in the world. And so we have to behave in that way. Right? We have to learn lessons from the past and then incorporate those lessons into how we train and how we develop policy, practice, and behaviors.
Okay, so let's say right now, right? I'm a new CEO. I've been in this position for about a month. And I haven't had the privilege of like already studying the past, right? And now I'm just hit with here's this moment I have to make a decision. How do I deal with that disruption from this standpoint?
Sure. So if I when we I'll take it from the perspective of CEOs we worked with in the past who happen to be new CEOs,
Okay.
right? Here's a trend. One, they to Derek's point, they wait too long. Right? They wait too long. So if you need to if you need to pivot, you pivot quickly. You inform your team that this is what's going to happen. You get the best advice and counsel from them, and you make the decision and move forward. And you reach out to your peers and you say, "Here's my situation. These are the one or two decisions that I have to make, or the one or two options that I have to make. I am inclined to make decision number one. Right? What do you think I should anticipate is going to happen next?" And that so again, studying the history is not the same as taking advantage of people who have experienced the history,
Hmm.
but both give you the benefit of the history, right?
Yeah, that's great. And for in our conversations when we were kind of going over this podcast episode, one thing that you mentioned was the way that a lot of leaders are promoted, whether they be from the fry cook to the manager to the district manager. A lot of reasons why some of these people do get promoted are from a technical standpoint. Wh- How do we equip these leaders and give them leadership skills to where when they are promoted, they're not just promoted based off of their own skill set, but they're also growing in that role?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great way of framing that. And I'll just put a little bit of meat on the bone before I answer the question. I've asked leaders many times before in your organization and in your industry. Do you believe that people are promoted up from one position to the next leadership position because of technical skill sets or because of a recognition of their leadership ability? And over again, it's because of technical skill sets, with the expectation that they will learn how to lead along the way, which means then that when that crisis comes, it's quite possible that this new leader doesn't know how to do it, or that an emerging leader who's been promoted quite quickly up through the ranks because of their technical skill sets has not had the time to develop the leadership skill sets necessary to be successful. So that then makes it contingent upon the organization to have a set of policies and practices that identify what are the gaps in this person's leadership and then fill those gaps. Right? We have what we call now sort of professional development, emerging leadership programs, et cetera, that I think these are ways of using past mistakes and wins to predict how we're going to develop policy, practice, and leadership development behavior. What I'm suggesting people do is come at it more with a scalpel as opposed to a shotgun. Leadership development ought not be, I'm going to develop you as a leader, period. Somebody has to identify where are the gaps in your leadership and then fill those particular gaps.
Hmm.
And that I think equips the leader to be able to engage in the disruptions that happen in a more effective way, efficient and effective way.
Can you give us an example of a leadership gap that can be costly to an organization?
100%. So let's take, for example, that what we use something called the connection quotient, and in the connection quotient, it measures 16 different leadership gaps that might exist, or leadership strengths that might exist. One of those might be mergers and acquisitions. So when there's a merger and acquisition that happens, we can call that a disruption. I think most people would agree that it is. That there are some leaders that do very well when it comes to that, both on the technical side, on the accountability side, on the emotional quotient side, all of it. They've got it. Others have gaps underneath the merger and acquisition. Another might be new leadership. A new CEO comes in, a new board member, a new board chair comes in. That is also a disruption, and it can cause fractures in the team if not managed well. So another is loneliness. When there's an issue of loneliness that occurs, and there's every evidence to suggest that both in the United States and worldwide, that loneliness is an epidemic, and it is something that must be dealt with on a consistent and active basis. But if you as a leader have a gap in one of those three areas, I'm really good with mergers and acquisitions. I've had new CEOs and new board chairs coming in, out even new local leaders at my local restaurant or at within my region to come in and do the kinds of work that new leaders do. I've been able to strive through that and bring my team together when that occurs. But this loneliness thing, I don't exactly know how to handle that. When I see the symptoms of what might be loneliness either in the mirror or I see it with one of my team members, I don't really know how to handle that well. But then we can take you to the leadership development gym and work on how to lead when loneliness rears its head, right? We don't have to worry about mergers and acquisitions. We don't have to worry about new leaders. We can focus just on this, right? And so now I can go to the gym and my right shoulder is weak, so I'm not doing leg presses all day, right? So you can be able to be very specific to what it is the person needs and help them to get stronger in those areas where there are some challenges.
Wow, I love that. I've had multiple conversations about empathy and emotional IQ, emotional intelligence as leaders. And today, how important is emotional intelligence as a leader? And do you feel like leaders are being taught and understanding this enough right now?
I think it's as important as it always has been. It's just being called out, say, over the last 15, 20 years, more and more so. And I might even go as far as to say that there's been an over-indexing of it in the last 15, 20 years. That's something I call the feelings paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
right? That my feelings matter. And I think feelings do matter, but I think we also have to agree, particularly those of us in leadership positions, that that feelings are not facts, right?
Yeah.
Yes, your feelings are important. Yes, your ability to empathize with people is important and will help the organization be more productive. But so is accountability, right? And so we can spend a great deal of time between me and team member number one, recognizing the emotional challenges, being empathetic to one another, but we still have to get work done. The deadline is still the deadline. The productivity measure is still the productivity measure. The KPI is still the KPI. It doesn't change because of the feelings that I have about a person, about a situation that is occurring. So in balance, we have to have accountability and empathy. Our EQ must be high and strong, as must our CQ, our connection quotient. And those are not more important than the other KPIs that identify productivity.
So as I've been doom scrolling, as they say, on like social media, Instagram, TikTok, I am hit with a plethora of emotions, whether it be, is this comet about to hit Earth or I just, there's so much going on, right? But, I feel like I'm a very sound individual and I feel like I don't read too into the hype and I don't get too emotionally invested into what I see on my phone. However, I can recognize that there is a whole generation of people who get very emotionally invested and tied to what they see on their phone. So as a leader, how do you lead when people who how do you lead a generation of teams that feel like their feelings are fact, that feel like their emotions are fact? How do you go about that being mindful of how they feel but pulling them up?
Yeah, so I'll go back to where you started. Those of us that get caught up in the doom scrolling, as it were, right?
Yeah.
We're not special. It's not just you that's doom scrolling. It's us, which is why it works. The algorithms work. The machine works well,
Yeah.
and it works well because it pumps us or pricks our emotions. So I also think I'm an emotionally sound person, but I'm also the person whose emotions get caught up in the by the algorithms, get
Hmm.
manipulated by the algorithms.
Yeah.
So I start with humility. All of the things that are happening are also happening to me,
Mm.
right? They're also happening to me. I'm not the special individual who navigates through the world and all of these things are happening around me but not happening to me. No, no, no. They're happening to me. They're happening to me.
Hmm.
You know, and I know if I'm having a bad day or if I'm having a day where I gotta get this good cry out. I know how to go and prick my own, push my own buttons,
Yeah.
and so does the algorithm,
Hmm.
right? So I think I might start there, right? That I'm a part of it. And when I go and I have conversations with it, I'm part of their algorithm, if you will. People call me when they need me for something because I'm part of their algorithm
Yeah.
to help them, push them, poke them, help them see something. So I think I start there with the humility that you're a part of the machine.
That's really good. So, for a leader who is training, right? Let's say you're a district manager and you're training your manager who's about 20 years old and you want to get them to be able to lead without their emotions. How do you train that?
Yeah, I wouldn't get them to train without their emotions. I'd get them to see that they have them,
Okay.
right? And these emotions are going to reveal themselves at the most unexpected time. And so, if in the training you can prick that emotion, you can draw out that emotion, you have their particular example to use. Hey, remember when we were training and we oversensitized you with this, or we had somebody to lean in and to pretend as if they were the drunken person at the bar that was doing too much, and you were trying to get them to calm down, and you wanted to stop serving them, and they kept pushing and they kept pushing, and you really got upset at them. That's going to happen again, and that's going to happen again, and that's going to happen again. You're a real live human, and that's supposed to happen. That's why we put this policy in place, right? That helps you to manage that. Telling people you need to manage your emotions, that's not necessarily a fair ask of people,
Mm.
especially if they haven't had experiences doing just that. You know, I was going to say if we can identify those gaps as I mentioned, and then train for those, right? You have to train in such a way that the lowest common denominator is very high. That your worst day is a high performance day.
Can you give us an example of what kind of policy we might be able to put in as far as like looking at what's going on, seeing how divisive and how polarizing our culture is right now, right? If I'm sitting in a restaurant and I have a waitress who has completely different beliefs than the person she's serving, and perhaps the person she's serving is wearing a certain type of clothing or they have a certain tattoo that is triggering for her, what kind of policy can we put in to make sure that she doesn't become so triggered to where it does end up being costly for the business?
Yeah, I think exactly what you just said. So, with if I am the organization, and there is been in our past, or we've learned from our industry that because of the uniform that people might be wearing that day, whether it's the tattoo or the hat or the shirt or the whatever it might be, right, and that might quote unquote trigger you. It is that triggering point. It is that triggering point where you need to act and behave, and we develop policy around that. It happens to James. James is the waiter. James says to his manager, "Hey, Mister Manager. Hey, Miss Manager. So and so has a T-shirt on, or a hat on, or a tattoo that is really just scratching me and moving me the wrong way. I am struggling to give them the best possible hospitality." That that there's a policy that is written that says if you are feeling this way, you are obligated to tap your manager on the shoulder and let her know I'm struggling a little bit here. I'm outside of my bandwidth here, right? Then the manager can provide you the proper support, right? You've now upgraded that.
On the flip side, what kind of policies have you seen or do you think companies should put into place for the way their employees are to behave on social media when these different polarizing moments are happening? Like like what to post, when to post, how to post. Like what do you think is a guardrail to put in place?
So I think if we go back, we can start with there's any number of case studies one can pull down,
Yeah.
right? And say, incident number 5 happened. When that happened, 5 of our team members posted about it on their personal websites or personal social media, etc. Right? They referenced the fact that they work for us. They referenced the fact that they're a team member, and they gave their particular feelings about it. Right? And here's where they got outside of their decision making ability and authority. And here's how it impacted our brand as an organization.
Yeah.
Because we're all probably great about it when somebody says, I love my organization. I just got promoted again. They gave me this really cool award. Look at me and the boss. Look at me and the CEO. Look at me and my team members in this picture. Right.
Hmm.
But if we have a brand harming incident,
Yeah.
and that same team member does something similar, well, then maybe we're not particularly as happy about it. So I think you have to have the case studies around it to talk with people so that they can see that there are different ways, better ways of handling this that help that young person if they're young, help this new person if they're new, help this senior person if they're senior, or help this person who has a wobble in one of these 16 different areas of disruption that I mentioned before. They were
Hmm.
very good when the disruption was a promotion. They were very good when the disruption was the CEO came to visit. They weren't so good when the disruption was their best friend got terminated for tardiness.
Yeah.
So it's teaching them how to manage disruptions, right? And how to use those disruptions to bring the team together. That when these kinds of disruptions happen that trigger a particular kind of thought or a particular kind of emotion, the triggering I mentioned before, that is when you are asked, the policy suggests, maybe requires that you tap your leader on the shoulder and say, I don't feel good about this.
Hmm.
Right? And that's before you go to your best friend social media and say, let me tell the world about what's going on.
Yeah. No, that's really important. I'm looking at like again, once again, looking at social media, seeing people who are getting fired, seeing people who are losing scholarships based off of things that are going viral, right? How can we how often do you think leaders should and organizations should equip their teams to understand how to behave during these times? Should it be an emergency break glass, or are we talking like quarterly, constant, just driving the point of if something were to happen, how should you behave? What do you think?
I think more than biannual, more than annual, more than quarterly. Many organizations have that their morning huddle at their restaurant or something to this of this fact, and it's a good time to bring up a mini case study of all right. So let's just run through something. Let's say that we have someone come in and they've had four too many drinks, and it's 5 o'clock, and the news is on, and this kind of stories comes over the television screen, and you hear somebody say this. How might you respond? Right? I
Mm,
think it's that kind of walk through, talk through as often as possible so that we can get people reps in how to handle these triggering behaviors, how to handle the behavior that somebody else gave them, the energy that somebody else gave them. We have to give people reps. And the more reps we can give them, the more we can expect them to behave a particular way. And
yeah.
then that gives us an opportunity to remind them, hey, we've gotten outside of your comfort level, tap somebody on the shoulder. Outside of your decision making authority, you tap somebody on the shoulder, right? And it's
Hmm.
okay to walk away. It's okay to create space. It's okay to insert yourself, right? Let me give another disruption that might occur that we've heard something about. We hear about human trafficking,
Hmm.
and if we see something, we should say something. Say something to who? And what does say something look like? Right? If we see a person who I think they might be being trafficked, I'm not sure. What should you do?
Yeah.
Right? Those are things we need to practice because who knows what I went through
Yeah.
from a human trafficking situation. Maybe it was me who was trafficked when I was younger, just 6 months or 6 years ago. Maybe it was my mother, my cousin, my best friend. So I might need a little practice in getting those reps.
Yeah. One thing that I'm kind of like thinking, I'm like, some of this stuff doesn't seem fair, right? It's not fair that certain organizations are going out of business because something went viral, something was exposed. But what do you say to that? What do you say to people who feel like this just isn't fair? It's not right. Social media shouldn't have this type of power over my organization.
Two things can be true at the same time. It should not, and it does. It should not, and it does. So what can we do? We can prepare. We can prepare. If you haven't had a viral incident that is negative, just keep living. Just keep
Yeah.
living. It's something a pastor told me at a friend of mine's funeral. He says, if you've never been on the front row at a funeral, just keep living.
Hmm.
So this is the same because we all want we
It's so sad. Man.
we
Man.
all want the viral moment that helps us to reach the next level of notoriety and productivity and profitability. We all want that one, right? So we also have to prepare for the opposite happening as
Speaking of that, on a lighter note, right? You see people like Keith Lee who can go to a restaurant and all of a sudden overwhelm a business overnight to where they're just thousands of people are lined up. How do you prepare for those type of disruptions through social media?
well. Some things are not possible to prepare for. You don't
Mm,
exactly know what's going to happen when you have 10 times as many people in half the amount of time,
yeah.
right? But you do know that you have a certain way of behaving, and you do your best under normal circumstances as a leader to put your team under stress that is beyond the day to day, right? You put them underneath the stress, or you ask them questions about the stress that's beyond the day to day. And that gives you an opportunity to for somebody to ask a question like you just did, a very rich question, like, well, what happens if we normally get a rush of 15 people? What if we get a rush of, I don't know, 100 people? What should we do?
Hmm.
Should I ask people just to hold on a second and then call for help? I mean, should I just try to handle it myself? Should I try out there and try to police the crowd? What should I do? Right. And in those moments where we put our teams in these stressful moments, then that's also an opportunity for new policies or practices or behaviors to be revealed, the
Mm,
kinds of things we should have had in place a little while ago.
yeah. Wow. What are three of the most important skills you think that a leader needs in order to cultivate an effective team during disruption?
In today's marketplace, confidence on balance with humility. I think part of the feelings paradigm is also grew up around the hyper individualism paradigm that look at me and look at my feelings, look at my personal branding,
Hmm.
right? Not my organizational branding, my family branding, my friend branding. What if personal branding never existed? But what did exist with just as much vigor and life and power was my family circle branding. I
Mm,
only brand across my friendship group, right?
yeah.
But Jeremiah is one of my friends, and he fell and hurt his face. Right? He did something stupid or silly in Las Vegas. Right? And that's part of the how that brand of impacts me. Well, Jeremiah I would have to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, how are we going to get this back together? Because we don't brand individually; we brand as a group.
Yeah.
So I think that confidence and humility in equal measure are that that's I call that let's call that one skill set.
Hmm.
The other is the courage to make people uncomfortable over and over and over again for the benefit of them, of the organization, and of the team. Right?
Yeah.
So those sort of human characteristics pointed in the direction of the team and not in the direction of the individual. Right? I'm
Hmm.
humble because I want the team to win. I'm confident because I want the team to win. I'm courageous because I want the team to win. Those kinds of things with that kind of attitude, with that kind of tone, and from the perspective of leading others.
Yeah. So in the work that you've done and just things that you see in the overall scope of just the industry and just business, what do you think is the biggest thing that is lacking at the leadership level that does cause people just to panic when disruption happens?
I think it is rare that senior leaders in complex organizations panic.
Mm,
I think what happens more often than not is they stand still.
mm,
And there's an organization called Principia that does a lot of work around ethics. And a couple of years ago, in one of their annual reports, they talked about that team members within organizations want their leaders to stand up and say something and say, "This is what we believe. This is what we believe," even if it's not what the team member believes. They appreciate that people stand up. They are less appreciative of leaders who say nothing, who are quiet. Right? And I would put that to leaders. You know your team and your organization better than I do. So what you say and how you say it and the tone with which you say it is that's on your side.
Hmm.
But I put to you that the trend of your team, the trend of teams, is that they like it when leaders stand up and say, "This is what I believe. This is what we stand for."
Hmm.
And there's any number of situations that are occurring right now in the world and that will occur tomorrow in the world to give you an opportunity to say, "This is what we believe. This is what we expect out of our team members. This is what we reward and compensate based on."
Hmm.
And if you're outside of that, you're outside of our principles. Doesn't mean you're a terrible person. You're outside of our principles. If you're outside of this, you're outside of our priorities.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean you're a terrible person. You're just outside of our priorities. As a very wise man once told me that your issue can be a very, very important issue. It's just not mine.
Hmm. And I feel like that goes right back to what you just said about having confidence and courage. But it almost seems like it's easy to say, "Oh, you need to be courageous," versus actually taking those steps when you do. I've seen leaders take courageous steps, and we've seen them fall and die on that same shield that they were working with. So what do you do in that situation? Like when the fear is necessary, and it's also like it's reasonable.
This is going to seem simplistic, but all of you may have heard this phrase before. All of the things you really need to know, you learn in kindergarten.
Hmm.
So, what's the kindergarten version of this? The kindergarten version of this is uh, nobody wants to play with me. They're over there, they're playing with the ball, and they won't let me play. And what would you tell your son or daughter? You'd say, go ask them if you can play. Go tell them you'd like to play. Let's get you your own ball. You can build your own team. We'd give them some ways to approach them. We'd tell them to be courageous. We tell them to jump off a cliff, and we know that it might harm them. Now, what
Hmm.
has happened is that perhaps too many of us as parents have created an environment where our children don't have enough failures. Right? But we also know that we need them to have failures in order for them to be successful.
Yeah.
So every decision you make is not going to be the one where you fall and die on your shield. It's just going to feel like it. Right? Just gonna feel like it. If your kid's getting ready to walk and you see them, standing up and they're kind of wobbly, you can go over there and save them and keep them from falling on their face, or you can sit back and say, "Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens."
Yeah.
Right? So I think that when it comes, if we move this to senior level leaders who have a decision to make about how am I going to articulate our principles to the team, how am I going to articulate our priorities to the team, and this may cost me individually, right? You got to look in the mirror and say, am I going to be proud of the person if I say this or if I do not say this? You
Yeah.
know, and you have to modulate that based upon the fact that you've got an entire organization and shareholders and other kind of stakeholders that are involved in what you're about to say, and that's why you make the big bucks.
Yeah. That's great. Wow. Because I'm as you're talking, that's exactly what I'm thinking. You just have to be comfortable failing, knowing that you're making the right decision that you feel at that moment.
Yeah, and these people, especially the senior levels, they have a bunch of almost failures in their back pocket. They can say, you know what, that almost got off the rails.
Yeah.
Right? They've got a few times when they just got lucky; it went their way.
Yeah.
They've had a few times when I was quiet just long enough,
Hmm.
and sometimes that I was quiet too long. I wish I would have been out there more.
Yeah.
So they have their own history to learn from. They have peers that they can call, and then when the time comes, they've got to make a decision, and you make the decision based upon all of those pieces. And you have to identify: Am I being courageous enough? Am I being humble enough? Am I being confident enough?
Hmm.
We hear a lot about what's the language is. I am a servant leader. I'm doing it for the people. I think all these things can be true, and you're still the CEO,
Yeah.
right? People are following you. People want to, ask to, need to follow you. So that
Yeah.
requires, therefore, that you lead.
Do you feel like do you feel like there are many leaders at that level who they're leading and they actually don't really have confidence?
Yes, yes. We use this phrase, the imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? We've used it way from a percentage perspective, way too often on women. There's a ton of men, probably just as many, if not more, that have imposter syndrome too. You get behind the desk for the first time, you get the promotion for the first time, second time, 10th time, and you don't feel like you're quite all the way there. And you make new CEO decisions that aren't as confident or as courageous as you would like. You wait too long to do some of those kinds of things.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there are many leaders who are in positions who aren't the Superman that or Superwoman that other people think they are. I heard this comedian talking about. I think he was telling a story, and the story goes something like this. He was doing something where he was giving a prize, and the prize was a monetary prize. And this guy who's kind of a beefy looking guy came up to him, kind of a well fit looking guy. He wins the award, the award, and he gives it to him. And the comedian is looking at him. He says, "Hey, you're looking like this is impacting you, right?" His face is a little perhaps emotional or something. And he says, "Yeah, winning this." He says, "My daughter's birthday is coming up, and I didn't have the money to give her a party or get her the gift that she wants. This money is going to allow her to see me as the dad she thinks I am."
Mm.
And I was
Oh,
like, "Ooh, that's that's it, right? People are going to see me as the leader they think I am if I put on the right suit today,
wow.
if I get somebody to craft the right bullet points for me today.
Mm.
You're a parent, you're a husband, you're a leader, and you know that there are times when you show up and those people think that you're a particular kind of man, particular kind of father, particular kind of leader, particular kind of husband, and you're like, I'm just holding this thing together. I don't know anything. I can barely spell dad, let alone am I a good one.
Yeah.
One of the things that I stay pretty firm with, if I talk to somebody for 20 minutes, 30 minutes about family or just comfortable stuff, and they haven't said anything about the wobbles in their life, you know, and their kids are perfect and their marriage is perfect. Oh, I can't trust you anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
You don't have to give me the horrible stuff, but just a little window into you know what, I'm just doing the best I can as a parent.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about leaders. If everything is going well, and I feel like our connection is such that you could reveal a wobble or two, but there's active work around not doing that, then maybe I need to work harder on our relationship, or maybe there's something else going on.
So, with that being said, do you feel like during these times of disruption, you need to be okay with understanding that there is going to be a wobble and not feel like one decision you're going to make is going to be the perfect solution?
That's it. And that knowing that it is possible to use disruption, which may be strategically designed to create fractures in your team, right? You can use that disruption to bring your team together. You 100% can. It's not about making it through. It's about making it through together and tighter and stickier to one another. In the food and hospitality space and beyond that, there's any number of things that are going to happen tomorrow that happened yesterday that
Hmm.
are going to keep us from being together and sticky as a team. How are you going to use that gift of crisis that you've been given to bring your team together?
Crisis as a gift. Oh my gosh. That's that's such a great way to look at this because these crises it exposes your team. It allows you to see exactly where the holes are. It see exactly who you have in certain positions who should not be there. So now it's up to you to really evaluate it from that standpoint of, okay, cool. Now we get to look at it from a clean slate, right?
Yes, and let me add to that. It
Mm-hmm.
also exposes the kind of leader you are and where
Mm.
your gaps are. Right? And the areas that we run from the most are the ones where our business opportunities often leave us. Right? So it's not just a crisis is not just an opportunity to look at your team. It's an opportunity to look at yourself as a leader. And if you can predict it out, you can see the gaps you have as a leader in the future and then get
Mm.
help before the real crisis happens.
Yeah. What do you think is a framework or a checklist that we should have as leaders, right? going forward, looking ahead at what may be coming in the future? What do you think we should start planning for, and how we can make sure our teams are prepared for whatever disruption comes next?
Sure. I think unfortunately we're in a time, and I think it's going to be this way for a little while, where, as I mentioned, crises are being placed in front of us, or they're just happening and they're being shoved into in front of us that feel like they're designed to separate Group A from Group B.
Mm, yeah.
And so I think that your checklist needs to be start with, so something happened, some disruption happened, new CEO, merger, something happened on the television screen, the Olympics come, whatever it is. How is this going to separate my team? You'd be
Mm.
thinking about that, right? How is this most logically going to fracture the possibility of it fracturing our team? And how do I take the principles that we have said are important and use those principles and the leadership opportunity and the bully pulpit that I have to bring our team together, leveraging the disruption? Don't run from the disruption, run into the fire, right? That's what we would tell our children to do. We would say, run into the fire and go save Mrs. Jenkins. She's on the third floor. That's what you'd want them to do, especially if you're Miss Jenkins, right? So we want to be able to prepare ourselves for that. So number one, recognize how is this likely to fracture our team. Number two, how do I leverage these our principles, our guiding principles and priorities to bring the team together? And then hopefully you can imagine this though before the crisis happens. We don't have to wait for the crisis to happen to train for the crisis that's going to happen. Your team should be annoyed that you keep putting them in these odd circumstances. They should be saying, "Come on, Madam CEO, you keep giving us these case studies that are never going to happen." They don't have your visibility as a leader. They don't have your area of responsibility as a CEO. Your job is to throw them in the deep end with nothing that's going to save them but them and the team. That's it. How are we going to get through this together? So I think those are the two and a half pieces on the checklist. Right? How is this crisis likely to fracture us? What are the principles that we have that I ought to be using to pull them together?
And to the rising leaders who are at the management level, mid management level, who are hoping to one day be in the C suite, how can they begin to prepare and understand how to navigate disruption, even from where they're at, from their vantage point?
Sure, sure. So they are not absolved from responsibility because at their area of response, at their level of responsibility, their level of decision making authority, they may see the exact same disruption differently than their C-suite leader might. So they are required, right? And this is a policy. This is a practice where a C-suite leader can say to their teams, "You are required to look at the disruption of the moment from the perspective of how it's going to fracture us or bring us together. And when you think we're missing something, it is your responsibility to raise your hand and say something." It is required because the solutions that we come up with on the East Coast may not apply on the West Coast. The thing that happened in the dirty South, in the deep South, right, may not even be visible to the people in the Northeast. So the people in the deep South need to raise their hand and say, "This is the challenge." And not just identify the challenge, but have the forethought to identify one or two solutions that you can get behind.
Dr. Poe, this has been so insightful for anyone who is listening and they would like to either work alongside you and you can help build their team and help incorporate these policies. How do they find you, and how can they work alongside you?
Sure. So I'm on all the regular social media platforms. On LinkedIn, Dr. James Pogue, Instagram, same thing, James Pogue, PhD, or just email me, jamespogue at James Pogue. We're always looking to collect great success stories, great case studies. Happy to pull that down and learn from you. If you got a great story to tell, I'd love to hear about it so that I can use your learnings to help other people. But if you also need a little help in how to develop out some strategies to make this happen, some professional development frameworks to make that happen. If you have questions about the connection quotient and how we use it at JP Enterprises to help guide leaders in these disruptive situations, then please feel free to reach out. We'd love to give you a hand and give you some help.
Thank you, Dr. Pogue. Like always, it's always a pleasure. Um, Everyone out there listening, I hope you learned a lot from this. As did I. I wrote a lot of notes, and I'm glad this is recorded because I'm going to keep referring back to this. Until next time, you guys, this is the Prosper Brief. Thank you.